You know, I want you to imagine for a second that you are standing on the sidewalk right in front of a massive, imposing, structurally condemned building.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we've all seen those in major cities, right?
Exactly. It's this huge, hulking piece of architecture. But the windows are completely boarded up. The concrete foundation is visibly cracked.
And you can probably see the rebar resting right through the pillars.
Yes, exactly. And you are standing there just minutes before the demolition crew actually arrives.
You can literally hear the heavy machinery idling down the street.
Right. The explosive charges have already been set at the load-bearing joints.
Yeah.
And you can feel that heavy, silent, almost electric anticipation in the air.
That tension of knowing something massive is about to come crashing down.
And there is absolutely nothing anyone can do to stop it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the exact energy of our source material today.
It really is a brilliantly visceral image to start with, and it's perfectly accurate to the text. The wrecking ball is suspended in midair, the countdown has started, and we were basically forced to stand there and watch the inevitable collapse.
So today, we are embarking on a meticulous deep dive into a text that carries that precise, inevitable weight. We're looking at Isaiah chapter 34.
And we're going to be specifically looking through the lens of the King James Version today, right?
We are, yeah, because it brings this this unmatched poetic gravity to the apocalyptic language. It just hits differently.
It really does.
Now, if you're familiar with biblical prophecy, you might actually know this specific chapter by a couple of intense nicknames.
Right. Scholars and theologians often call it the little apocalypse.
Yeah, or my personal favorite, the grand foreclosure of the world system.
I love that one. Grand foreclosure really captures the legal, financial, and final nature of what we're dealing with here.
Because a foreclosure implies that a debt has gone unpaid for far too long, right?
Exactly. The repeated warnings in the mail have been completely ignored.
Yeah.
And now the rightful owner is stepping in to reclaim the property by force.
Wow.
But, to truly understand the weight of chapter 34, we have to look at its structural placement within the larger book of Isaiah.
Okay.
It operates within what literary scholars actually call a prophetic diptych.
Okay, let me stop you right there, because prophetic diptych sounds like something you'd hear in like a graduate level theology seminar.
Fair enough, yeah.
Break that down for us. What exactly is a diptych in this context, and why does it matter to someone just trying to understand the text?
Well, think of a diptych in the traditional art history sense. It's a two-panel painting.
Okay, like the ones hinged together in old churches.
Exactly. The two images are hinged together and meant to be viewed side by side to create a complete unified message.
So you can't just look at one part.
Right. You literally cannot look at one panel and understand the artist's full intent without looking at the other. So in the book of Isaiah, chapter 34 is the dark, terrifying, stormy mirror to chapter 35.
Chapter 35 being the second panel of the painting.
Yes. You see, chapter 35 is this breathtaking, glorious vision of a blooming, restored garden.
I remember that. It talks about the desert rejoicing, right?
Right, the desert blossoming as the rose, the blind seeing, the deaf hearing. It describes this grand highway of holiness being established for the redeemed.
It's basically paradise fully restored.
It is. But here is the critical theological reality that so many modern readers completely miss.
What's that?
You cannot have the blooming, restored garden of chapter 35 without the fiery, cosmic demolition of chapter 34.
Oh, wow. So it's essentially the necessary clearing of the lot.
Yes, exactly.
You can't just plant a beautiful rose garden on top of a toxic waste dump.
Precisely. I mean, you wouldn't build a pristine new hospital on a plot of land that is covered in a crumbling, asbestos-filled ruin.
Right. You have to bring in the bulldozers first.
You have to aggressively cleanse the site. So chapter 34 is the demolition.
The bulldozers.
Yes. It's the violent clearing of the toxic lot of human rebellion, so that the kingdom of God, which is described in the very next chapter, can actually be established.
Man, that reframes it entirely. We aren't just reading about destruction for destruction's sake, are we?
No, not at all.
We are reading about preparation.
Exactly. Preparation for something beautiful.
Okay, let's unpack this. As we dig into this text today, we're going to be looking at three distinct levels of meaning simultaneously.
It's a bit like playing three-dimensional chess.
It really is. So first, there's the near historical level. That's the actual geopolitical judgment of the ancient nation of Edom that happened centuries ago.
Right, the immediate historical context.
Second, there's the eschatological level, which is just a theological word for the end times, representing the final global judgment of all nations yet to come.
Yes.
And third, there is the Christological level. This is the shadow of Jesus Christ that is cast over this entire terrifying chapter.
And we're going to see how all three of these layers overlap, interact, and ultimately point to the exact same profound truths.
It really requires us to read with a very wide lens, doesn't it?
It does, seeing the immediate history, but also the cosmic implications that stretch all the way to the end of human history.
So, we've established the scale, but let's actually look at how the chapter begins, because what's wild here is the sheer audacity of the opening address.
It's quite the opening statement.
It really is.
Yeah.
God doesn't just address a single rogue nation or a specific corrupt king. He issues what amounts to a cosmic subpoena.
A cosmic subpoena, I like that.
Listen to verse 1. It says, "Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, you people. Let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world, and all things that come forth of it."
It's a universal summons. God is calling the entire globe, the entire cosmos, into his courtroom.
So this isn't just a localized border dispute in the ancient Near East?
No, not at all. This is the creator of the universe calling all of humanity, all human civilizations, all governments, and even the physical earth itself to the witness stand.
To hear the final verdict.
Ex-
It reminds me of a judge violently banging the gavel and demanding absolute silence in the courtroom before delivering a capital sentence.
That's the exact tone.
And verse 2 hits incredibly hard, giving the specific reason for this universal summons. It says, "For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to the slaughter."
That word indignation is key there.
Yeah, that word, it feels very deliberate, but also deeply uncomfortable for a modern reader.
It is deeply deliberate. The Hebrew word used there for indignation is ketzef.
Ketzef.
Right. It denotes this overflowing, passionate, boiling anger.
But we have to be extremely careful here, right? Because when we hear words like anger or fury,
We almost always project our own psychological baggage onto them.
right, as flawed human beings, we think of a petty temper tantrum.
We think of a frustrated boss yelling at an employee, or an abusive parent, or a dictator losing control of his emotions because his ego was bruised.
Exactly. We think of someone flying off the handle in traffic because they got cut off.
Just completely unpredictable and volatile.
And totally out of proportion to the offense. But I'm assuming divine indignation operates on a completely different framework.
Entirely different framework. Divine indignation is not an emotional outburst or a loss of self-control.
What is it then?
It is an attribute of his perfect justice. It's the righteous, settled, calculated, holy wrath of a perfect God whose laws have been violated.
Whose vulnerable people have been oppressed.
Exactly, and whose beautiful creation has been defiled by cruelty and pride.
So it's not a tantrum.
No. Think of it like an immune system.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Right. A healthy immune system aggressively and violently attacks a deadly virus.
Because if it didn't, the body would die.
Exactly. God's indignation is the inevitable chemical reaction of absolute moral purity coming into direct contact with absolute moral corruption.
I hear you saying it's perfect justice, like an immune system attacking a virus.
Right.
But let's be honest about the text here.
Okay.
Look at verses 3 and 4. The imagery is shocking.
It is very graphic.
It says, "Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountain shall be melted with their blood."
He goes on from there.
Yeah, it says, "And all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down, as the leaf falleth off from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree."
It's intense.
Dissolving the sky.
Yeah.
Mountains melting with blood. I mean, to a modern ear, that still sounds wildly disproportionate.
I get that.
Walk me through how total annihilation and rotting corpses equals a balanced scale of justice.
That is the exact tension the text wants you to feel. First, we have to understand the use of hyperbole in ancient Near Eastern apocalyptic poetry.
Okay, hyperbole, so it's an exaggeration to make a point.
Essentially, yes. The purpose of the hyperbole is to convey a reality that is simply too massive for ordinary literal language.
Give me an example of how they viewed this.
Well, think about what a mountain represents to the ancient mind. They didn't view mountains just as geographical features.
Right.
They viewed them as the unshakable pillars, literally holding up the sky. They represent the most permanent, foundational institutions in the human experience.
So to say they melt with blood.
Means that no earthly institution, no government, no empire, no matter how ancient or solid it seems, can withstand the dissolving power of this judgment.
Ah, okay. So it's not literally millions of gallons of blood dissolving granite.
No.
It's a metaphor for the absolute collapse of power structures.
Correct. But to your point about the graphic, disturbing nature of the imagery, the stench, the unburied corpses.
Yeah, why does the Bible go there? It's so gross.
What's fascinating here is that Isaiah, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, is deliberately confronting his audience's deepest psychological illusions.
What do you mean?
You see, sin isn't elegant. Rebellion against God isn't some romantic philosophical stance like some tortured poet shaking his fist at the sky.
Right.
At its core, rebellion produces death, and death is rotting, chaotic, and stinking.
That paints a very different picture than the glamour of power.
Exactly. Isaiah is writing to a people in Judah who were constantly mesmerized by the power, the wealth, and the shiny armor of wicked empires like Assyria and Babylon.
They were intimidated by them.
And attracted to them. By painting this graphic picture of rotting corpses, he completely disrupts the modern psychological invincibility fable.
The invincibility fable. Wow, that's a lie we tell ourselves, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
That we are the exception to the rule. That tragedy, consequence, and judgment, well, those happen to other people in other centuries.
Right.
But our modern systems, our advanced economies, our technology that will save us.
Yes. Empires always think they're untouchable. The Assyrians thought it, the Romans thought it, modern superpowers think it.
Billionaires think their underground bunkers and diversified portfolios will save them.
But Isaiah says, look at the stench, look at the rot. That is where your pride ends.
It's the ultimate reality check.
And notice the staggering progression in the text. It starts with earthly political collapse, armies and nations falling in verses 2 and 3, but then in verse 4, it moves rapidly.
To cosmic dissolution.
Yes. The physical universe itself begins to break down. The heavens roll together like a scroll. The stars fall like dead, withered leaves.
Theologians call this decreation, right?
Decreation, exactly.
Decreation. Okay, I really want to pull on that thread. How exactly does decreation work? Is it just destruction, or is it something more specific?
It is highly specific. Think back to Genesis 1.
Creation week.
Right. God speaks order into the chaotic cosmos. He separates the waters. He sets the sun, moon, and stars in their specific ordered places to govern the day and night.
So the universe is a perfectly tuned, ordered mechanism.
Exactly. Here in Isaiah 34, because of the accumulated unbearable weight of human rebellion, the fabric of the ordered cosmos itself begins to unravel.
Unraveling order back into chaos.
God doesn't just smash it. He begins to withdraw the sustaining word that holds it all together.
Wow.
The stars fall out of their assigned places. The sky is rolled away like an old scroll that is finished being read.
And if we connect this to the broader biblical narrative, this exact specific imagery is picked up and used by Jesus and the apostles in the New Testament, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
I was going to say, the falling stars and the rolled up skies sound incredibly familiar if you've read the end of the Bible.
They do. In Matthew 24, in the famous Olivet Discourse, Jesus himself says the sun will be darkened and the stars will fall from heaven.
Yeah.
And later, in Revelation 6, verses 14, the Apostle John sees a vision where the stars of heaven fall to the earth, exactly like untimely figs falling from a tree shaken by a mighty wind.
So that's the exact same imagery as Isaiah.
Yes, and the sky departs as a scroll when it is rolled together. Isaiah is laying the foundational vocabulary for the end of the world.
So John in Revelation isn't just making up new imagery in a vacuum.
No, he is confirming that Isaiah's vision is the literal roadmap for the apocalypse.
Okay, so we've got this massive universe collapsing event. The camera of the prophecy has pulled all the way back to view the whole dissolving cosmos.
The widest possible shot.
Right. But then, right in verse 5, the scope narrows intensely. It zooms in like a high-powered laser on one specific geographical place.
Let's hear verse 5.
It says, "For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment."
Idumea.
Yeah, Idumea is the Greco-Roman name for Edom.
Right.
Why does the universal creator, the God who is currently rolling up the entire universe like a scroll, suddenly care so much about this specific rocky desert kingdom located south of the Dead Sea?
It's a great question. To understand the intense focus on Edom, we have to unpack the deep, multi-generational history here, and then look at how biblical typology functions.
Okay, let's start with the history.
First, the history. The Edomites were the literal descendants of Esau.
Esau. Remember the story of the twin brothers Jacob and Esau from Genesis?
Exactly. Jacob, who of course was later renamed Israel, manipulated their blind father Isaac and essentially stole Esau's birthright and blessing.
The famous bowl of red stew.
Yes, the red stew. From that moment, Esau harbored a murderous resentment against his brother.
And that personal fraternal bitterness didn't just die with them, did it?
No, it calcified and infected their descendants for centuries. These two nations were literally brothers, but there was a perpetual, bitter, deeply ingrained hostility.
So how did that manifest historically?
Well, when Israel was attacked centuries later by foreign invaders, like the Babylonians, Edom didn't just stand by neutrally.
What did they do?
They actively rejoiced. The entire prophetic book of Obadiah is dedicated to detailing how the Edomites stood at the crossroads to cut down fleeing Israelite refugees.
That's horrible.
And hand them over to their slaughterers. They harbored a deep, ancient, unyielding hatred for God's chosen people.
Okay, so historically, they committed terrible atrocities against their own relatives. God is addressing a specific historical war crime.
Yes.
But how does that connect to the end of the world? That brings us to the typology, right?
Right. Exactly. In biblical literature, historical realities often become templates or archetypes for much larger spiritual truth.
So Edom becomes an archetype.
Typologically, Edom represents the flesh. Throughout Scripture, you have this constant dichotomy. Jacob represents the spirit, the chosen, the reliance on God's grace, despite deep personal flaws.
And Esau.
Esau, and by extension, Edom represents the flesh, human effort, pride, and the self-made man who completely despises spiritual things.
Because the Edomites lived in these impregnable rock fortresses in places like Petra, right?
Yes, literally cities carved into the sides of sheer cliffs. They were incredibly arrogant. They thought no one could ever touch them.
So Edom becomes the ultimate archetype of the anti-church, the rebellious world system.
And all human civilizations that are in perpetual hostility toward God's sovereignty.
Got it. So when the sword of the Lord comes down on Edom, it's a proxy judgment.
Exactly. It's a localized preview of what is going to happen to the entire world system that opposes God.
And the language used to describe this proxy judgment is incredibly striking. Let's look at verses 6 and 7.
Go ahead.
It says, "The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For the Lord hath a sacrifice in Bozrah, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea."
And verse 7.
Right. "And the unicorns shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness."
Such powerful imagery.
I'm looking at this, and it feels like a massive intentional inversion of the normal biblical rules. Innocent animals are usually the sacrifice.
Right.
But here, the sinners are the sacrifice.
You've hit on the core theological terror of this passage. It is a terrifying reversal of the Levitical sacrificial system.
How does that system normally work?
Normally, in the Old Testament, an innocent animal, a lamb, a goat, a ram, is brought to the temple. The sinner lays his hands on the animal's head, symbolically transferring his guilt. The animal is sacrificed on the altar to atone for the sins of the people. The innocent takes the wrath, the blood is shed, so the guilty sinner can be forgiven and walk away free.
It's a beautiful system of substitutionary grace.
It is. But here in Isaiah 34, we see the absolute nightmare scenario.
Because Edom rejected that grace.
Because Edom has violently rejected God's mercy and opposed his people, God's sword is gorged on them.
Wow.
The slaughter is compared to a massive cosmic temple sacrifice taking place in Bozrah, the capital city of Edom.
So the unrepentant sinners literally become the sacrifice to satisfy divine justice.
Yes, it's the ultimate irony of divine justice. The spiritual law of the universe is that sin requires a payment.
Blood must be shed to balance the cosmic scales of justice.
Exactly. If you stubbornly refuse the innocent sacrifice that God provides for your sin, you eventually have to pay the wage yourself.
You become the sacrifice on the altar of God's justice.
You do.
That is a chilling, sobering thought. Justice demands a payment one way or another. But I have to ask about a specific word in verse 7 that always trips people up.
Let me guess. Unicorns.
Yes, unicorns. The text says, "And the unicorns shall come down with them." Let's clear this up, because I know we aren't talking about mythical white horses with sparkling horns running around in an apocalyptic bloodbath.
No, definitely not mythical horses.
What is actually going on with that translation?
It's a great question, and it really highlights the challenge of translating ancient texts. The King James Version was translated in 1611, and the scholars used the word unicorns to translate the ancient Hebrew word reem.
Reem.
Right. At the time, they didn't have the archaeological or linguistic data we have today.
So what does reem actually mean?
Through modern study of ancient Akkadian and Ugaritic texts, we know now that reem refers to the wild ox, specifically the aurochs.
Oh, the aurochs. I've seen artist renderings of aurochs based on skeletal remains. They're absolutely massive, weren't they?
Much larger than modern cattle.
Yeah, they were huge.
They were massive, incredibly fierce, intensely territorial, and completely untamable beasts. They actually went extinct in the 1600s, but in ancient Near Eastern poetry and literature, they were basically the tanks of the animal kingdom.
The tanks of the ancient world.
Right. They represented immense, unstoppable strength, royal power, and military might. Ancient kings would hunt them just to prove their bravery.
Okay, so why include these massive, untamable beasts here alongside the lambs and the goats in this sacrificial metaphor? What is the point of the contrast?
It's a brilliant, penetrating commentary on human social stratification.
Okay, unpacking that a bit.
It shows the absolute impartiality of God's judgment. Think about how society is structured. The lambs and goats represent the common people.
The everyday citizens.
Right, the everyday citizens, the foot soldiers, the followers who blindly went along with a rebellious world system.
The wild oxen, the aurochs or unicorns.
They, along with the bulls, represent the untouchable elites.
The ones at the very top.
Exactly. They are the kings, the military supergenerals, the billionaire oligarchs, the tech titans, the political power brokers who think their immense wealth, status, and influence make them completely immune to consequence. God is saying that this judgment is the great leveler.
It doesn't matter if you are a humble peasant or the most powerful emperor on the planet.
Exactly. Think of it like a massive tsunami.
Okay.
A tsunami doesn't care about your zip code.
Yeah.
It doesn't care if you live in a flimsy tin beach shack
Yes.
or a multi-million-dollar reinforced concrete oceanfront mansion.
Right.
When the water pulls back, which is the warning phase, people might feel a false sense of security. But when that towering wall of water finally comes, it comes for everyone equally.
The ocean doesn't respect your financial portfolio or your political connections.
No, it doesn't. The wild ox falls right alongside the lamb. The great slaughter in Bozrah shows that all human defense mechanisms, all our proud societal structures, are entirely useless against the precise, measured sword of heaven.
So we've identified the target. Edom acting as the representative of the arrogant world system.
Yes.
We've seen the method. The sword of heaven acting as a sacrificial slaughter, leveling the great and the small alike. Now, the text pivots to reveal the actual underlying motive behind all this cosmic destruction.
This is a crucial pivot.
Verse 8 says, "For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion." This verse feels like the key that unlocks the entire chapter.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Everything we just read and everything we're about to read is contextualized right here in verse 8.
Because otherwise it just seems so harsh.
Exactly. If you skip this verse, God looks like a monster.
Oh.
But this verse explains that God is not acting out of random malice. He's acting specifically as the vindicator.
He is stepping into a legal dispute.
The controversy of Zion, the word for controversy in Hebrew is riv, which is a formal legal term for a lawsuit or a legal dispute.
So Zion represents God's people, the church, the persecuted believers throughout history, and God is taking up their lawsuit.
Yes. For millennia, God's people have been oppressed, mocked, marginalized, and slaughtered by the Edoms of the world.
Yeah.
And God is saying, I have heard the cries. I have taken up your case. The lawsuit is finally going to trial. The evidence has been presented, and I am the supreme judge.
Man, that is profound, deep encouragement for believers who feel like injustice is constantly winning.
It really is.
When we look at history, or even when we just turn on the news today, it feels like the bad guys get away with it.
Oh, constantly.
The corrupt politicians retire wealthy. The oppressors die peacefully in their beds.
But verse 8 says no. God keeps perfect, meticulous records, and injustice does not go unnoticed. A reckoning is on the calendar.
I want to look closely at the phrasing there because the contrast is really fascinating to me. The day of vengeance versus the year of recompense.
That's a very intentional contrast.
Why the difference in time frames? What does this reveal about God's character?
This reveals something beautiful and foundational about how God views time, justice, and mercy. Vengeance, the necessary destruction of evil, The pouring out of wrath is described as a swift surgical day.
A day, so it's brief.
It's a brief, necessary, almost reluctantly applied intervention to stop the cancer of sin from consuming creation entirely.
Or the year.
The year of recompense, the restoration, the blessing, the making things right for his people. That is the long, enduring, permanent reality.
A day versus a year.
The prophet Isaiah actually calls judgment God's strange work in chapter 28.
Yeah.
It is necessary, but it is not his primary desire.
Mercy, blessing, and restoration are his default enduring posture.
Exactly. A day of wrath, but a year of grace.
That brings a lot of comfort regarding the character of God, but the description of the judgment itself that follows is, well, it's anything but comforting.
No, it's pretty bleak.
Let's look at verses 9 and 10, which describe the physical aftermath in the land of Edom.
Go ahead.
And the streams thereof shall be turned into pitch, and the dust thereof into brimstone, and the land thereof shall become burning pitch. It shall not be quenched night nor day. The smoke thereof shall go up forever. From generation to generation it shall lie waste. None shall pass through it forever and ever.
Pitch and brimstone.
That is an incredibly bleak, permanent picture.
It is, and for an ancient reader, it immediately evokes a very specific biblical memory.
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes, the typology of Sodom and Gomorrah from Genesis 19. The fire, the brimstone, the unending smoke.
So it's total destruction.
On a near historical physical level, it implies a total devastating ecological disaster.
Wow.
Think of the burning oil fields of Kuwait during the Gulf War.
Oh, I've seen footage of that. The black, toxic smoke turning day into night.
The very earth on fire, rivers of petroleum blazing out of control, represents an environment rendered utterly and permanently toxic to human life.
A landscape that is fundamentally hostile. But remember our 3 levels of interpretation. We aren't just talking about an ancient geographical location anymore, are we?
No, we're not. On the eschatological level, the end times level, it extends to eternal judgment.
How so?
This exact imagery of the smoke going up forever and the fire never being quenched is picked up directly by the Apostle John in Revelation 14.11.
Really? The exact imagery?
He uses it to describe the final, eternal state of those who take the mark of the beast, who completely and permanently align themselves against God.
So Isaiah isn't just describing a ruined city.
No, he is giving us the theology of hell. It is permanent, unquenchable isolation.
Man, if you're listening to this and thinking, well, I'm glad I don't live in ancient Edom, this doesn't apply to me, the sources suggest we shouldn't let ourselves off the hook so easily.
Definitely not.
It's incredibly tempting to look at the Edom archetype and immediately project it onto whichever political party, rival nation, or modern superpower you happen to disagree with.
It's human nature to point the finger.
But the terrifying thing about this text is its absolute impartiality, isn't it? As you review this material, you realize no one gets a free pass.
That's a crucial point to make. We can't take sides based on modern politics here. The judgment of Edom is a mirror for every society.
Every society.
Whether a system is far left or far right, whether it's an ancient monarchy, a communist regime, or a modern Western democracy.
None are exempt.
Any system that builds its core identity on excluding God, aggressively secularizing its public square, oppressing the vulnerable, and trusting in its own military or economic invincibility is acting in the spirit of Edom.
So if a nation does those things, they are Edom.
When a culture normalizes rebellion against divine law and institutionalizes systemic injustice, it is quite literally pouring the pitch and piling up the brimstone for its own eventual spectacular collapse.
History is an overcrowded graveyard of invincible empires that acted like Edom and met the exact same fate.
It really is.
Okay, so the fire burns out human civilization, the palaces fall, the mighty fortresses are ruined, the economies collapse, the political systems dissolve.
Total devastation.
But the land doesn't just stay empty. Nature and, as we're about to see, something far darker and more disturbing moves in to reclaim the ruins.
Let's read verses 11 and 12.
But the cormorant and the bittern shall possess it. The owl also and the raven shall dwell in it, and he shall stretch out upon it the line of confusion and the stones of emptiness. They shall call the nobles thereof to the kingdom, but none shall be there, and all her princes shall be nothing.
There is some really interesting language there.
Yeah, I have to admit, stones of emptiness and line of confusion feel like very strange, almost clunky ways to describe a ruined building. What is the underlying Hebrew getting at there?
It sounds strange in English, but to a Hebrew reader, it is a massive flashing neon sign.
Really? Why?
The specific Hebrew words behind the English translation confusion and emptiness in verse 11 are Tohu wabohu.
Wait, tohu wabohu. I know I've heard that phrase before. Where does that come from?
It comes from the very first page of your Bible, Genesis 1:2.
Oh, the earth was without form and void.
Tohu wabohu.
Wow.
It is a direct, deliberate, deeply unsettling quote. Isaiah is reaching back to the dawn of creation. Remember earlier when we talked about decreation?
Yeah, the unraveling of order.
Here it is in action. God is depicted as a cosmic builder using the measuring line and the plumb line.
Which are tools usually used to construct a straight, level building.
But here, he is using them to systematically deconstruct the civilization back to its primordial, chaotic, unformed state.
That is wild.
Sin, when allowed to run its full course, literally uncreates the universe. Where there was order, infrastructure, politics, and a noble ruling class, now there is nothing.
All her princes shall be nothing.
The Hebrew word used for nothing there is amian, which means literal non-existence, total societal evaporation.
And the wildlife takes over the ruins. Verse 13. And thorns shall come up in her palaces, nettles and brambles in the fortresses thereof. And it shall be an habitation of dragons and a court for owls.
Just for clarity, the dragons in the King James translation refers to jackals or wild dogs that inhabit desert ruins.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense than literal dragons.
Right. And the owls, ravens, cormorants, and bitterns are all birds that are specifically categorized as unclean in the Levitical law of Moses.
So it's a picture of utter unclean desolation.
Yes, but it gets much stranger and much more unsettling in verse 14.
Let's read it, because this is where the text takes a turn into pure horror.
Go ahead.
The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl also shall rest there and find for herself a place of rest.
So dark.
A court for owls, satyrs, screech owls. This sounds like the ultimate post-apocalyptic movie set, or like a haunted house on a cosmic scale. I know we were talking about Greek mythology here, so what exactly are these creatures?
This is where we have to understand the ancient Near Eastern worldview regarding the spiritual realm.
Okay.
The Hebrew word translated as satyr is serum, which literally translates to hairy ones or he-goats.
Hairy ones.
In biblical theology, like in Leviticus 17, where God explicitly forbids the Israelites from sacrificing to them, these hairy ones were heavily associated with demonic presences and dark desert spirits.
So they weren't just animals.
No, they were actual demonic entities that pagan cultures feared and worshipped.
And the screech owl.
The Hebrew word there is Lilith.
Wait, Lilith.
Yes. In ancient Jewish folklore and extra-biblical literature, Lilith was a night monster, a female demon of the dark that haunted ruins and desolate places.
So we aren't just talking about a national park or a nature preserve taking over an abandoned city here. We are talking about an active, malevolent, supernatural infestation.
Yes. This raises a profoundly important question about the unseen, behind-the-scenes spiritual mechanics of our world.
What's happening behind the scenes?
Isaiah is pulling back the curtain on a terrifying theological reality. Spiritual territorial displacement.
Spiritual territorial displacement.
You see, when a civilization rebels, when it completely and systematically rejects God, God eventually honors their choice.
He lets them go.
He gives them what they want. He withdraws his common grace, his protective hand, and his spirit from that culture.
But that creates a massive spiritual vacuum.
Exactly. And the spiritual realm, just like the natural realm, absolutely abhors a vacuum. When the presence of the living God leaves, demonic entities, these serum and night monsters, rush in to inhabit the ruins.
Man, that is incredibly heavy. But if we bring this into the 21st century, what does this look like today?
It's a great question to consider.
Because we don't literally see hairy goat demons dancing in the ruins of abandoned shopping malls or government buildings, right?
Right.
How does this spiritual territorial displacement manifest in a modern society?
The physical manifestation changes, but the underlying spiritual reality remains absolutely identical.
So how do we see it?
Look at the psychological and social landscape of a modern, post-Christian, highly secularized culture. The secular promise was that if we remove God, if we tear down the old religious structures, we will achieve a rational, scientific, peaceful, enlightened utopia.
That was the promise, yeah.
But Isaiah 34 reveals the truth. You don't get a neutral utopia when you remove God.
What do you get?
You get a spiritual wasteland haunted by new demons. The satyrs and night monsters of our digital age are the terrifying epidemics of nihilism, crippling anxiety, deep despair, skyrocketing addiction, and profound identity confusion.
Wow.
These are the dark, destructive spiritual forces that rush in to inhabit the ruins of a culture that has systematically evicted the living God from its public square, its universities, its laws, and its heart.
So nature and supernature abhors a vacuum.
You either have the Spirit of God or you have the tohu wabohu of the demonic wasteland. There is no middle ground.
That connection to modern anxiety and nihilism is just. It's profound. It makes the text feel incredibly urgent.
It's very urgent.
Okay, so if someone is listening to this, or if someone was listening to Isaiah preach this back in the 8th century BC, and they're doubting this terrifying vision, thinking it's just ancient doom scrolling or religious scare tactics, Isaiah offers what might be the most ancient version of Fact Check Me.
Yes, he does. He lays down a challenge.
Let's look at verse 16. Seek ye out of the book of the Lord, and read. No one of these shall fail, none shall want her mate. For my mouth it hath commanded, and his spirit it hath gathered them.
This is a stunning moment of prophetic self-authentication.
Yeah.
Isaiah is essentially saying, write this down, put this in the official government records, archive this scroll, and centuries from now, when you look at the ruins of Edom, check the historical archives.
He's saying history will prove him right.
It's a bold, uncompromising claim about the absolute infallibility of God's word. He is declaring that history will perfectly, empirically validate prophecy.
But I want to push back on a very specific, almost bizarre detail he includes here.
Okay, what's that?
He says, none shall want her mate. He's talking about the birds and the beasts inheriting the ruins, right?
Right.
Why emphasize that none of these unclean birds or wild beasts will lack a mate? It seems like such a tiny, almost absurd detail to throw into the middle of the apocalypse.
It does seem a bit out of place at first glance.
The world is ending, the stars are falling, the mountains are melting, but don't worry, the vultures will definitely find a girlfriend. I mean, why include that?
It does seem almost humorous until you realize the staggering theological implication behind it.
Okay, lay it on me.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how God operates, it's actually one of the most comforting things in the entire chapter for a believer to rest their faith on.
Really? How so?
It speaks to God's meticulous, granular, unfathomable sovereignty.
Walk me through that. How do mating birds equal comfort?
Think about the logistical implication of that promise. If God is so incredibly detailed, so sovereignly and intimately in control of the physical universe, that he is actively managing the mating habits of vultures, jackals, and owls in a desolate wasteland.
Just to ensure his prophetic word comes true to the absolute microscopic letter.
Exactly. If he is doing that, then he is absolutely in control of the major chaotic details of human history. And bringing it even closer to home, it means he is intimately in control of the overwhelming, stressful, chaotic details of your personal life.
Because if he manages the sparrows and the vultures,
he manages your tomorrow. It means his word is absolutely empirically reliable. Not a single promise of judgment will fail, which means, wonderfully, not a single promise of salvation will fail either.
That changes the perspective entirely. The mating birds are tangible proof of a God who oversees the smallest details of the universe.
Exactly.
And then verse 17 wraps up this section of judgment with another fascinating detail. And he hath cast the lot for them, and his hand hath divided it unto them by line. They shall possess it forever. From generation to generation shall they dwell therein.
This is a powerful, deeply ironic theological reversal.
Reversal of what?
Well, to a Jewish reader, the language being used here, casting the lot, dividing the land by line, is completely recognizable. It is the exact same vocabulary used in the book of Joshua.
When they entered the promised land.
Yes. When Joshua led the Israelites into the promised land, God cast lots and divided by line the beautiful land flowing with milk and honey, giving it to the tribes of Israel as their eternal, blessed inheritance.
Oh, I see the contrast. So instead of giving a beautiful land to his covenant people,
he is giving an eternal inheritance of absolute desolation to the jackals, the vultures, and the demonic spirits.
God is acting as the ultimate architect.
And land surveyor. He surveys the ruined land of Edom. He draws the property lines with absolute precision, and he issues the title deed to the wild beasts forever.
Wow.
It shows that even in the midst of cataclysmic, world-ending judgment, God is not out of control. It isn't chaos from heaven's perspective. It is a highly ordered, divinely measured, perfectly executed administration of justice.
Okay, so we've walked through the cosmic unraveling, the fire, the brimstone, the blood-soaked soil, the demonic wastelands, and the meticulous distribution of ruins.
We've covered a lot of ground.
It is heavy, heavy stuff. It can feel oppressive. But we have a major problem if we stop right here, don't we?
A huge problem.
If we close the book on verse 17, we are missing the entire point of the chapter, the entire point of the prophetic diptych, and the entire narrative arc of Scripture.
We can't stop at the demolition.
No. We have to ask the most important question. Where is the good news? Where is Jesus Christ in Isaiah 34? Because at first glance, reading just the text on the page, he seems totally absent.
It's true, the name Jesus isn't printed in Isaiah 34, but his shadow falls over every single verse if you know how to look for it. The New Testament writers teach us how to read the Old Testament.
So where do we see him?
First, we see Jesus here as the divine warrior. Ask yourself, who is the one actually wielding the sword bathed in heaven in verse 5?
It's him.
Fast forward to the end of the Bible, to Revelation 19, and we see Jesus Christ, whose name is called the Word of God, returning on a white horse, wearing a vesture dipped in blood, with a sharp sword coming from his mouth to strike down the rebellious nations.
So he is the ultimate judge of Isaiah 34.
The Christ who saves is the exact same Christ who judges.
That fundamentally challenges the popular modern cultural image of Jesus, doesn't it? We like the gentle teacher giving moral advice on a hillside, petting lambs.
It's a very incomplete picture.
But here, he is the righteous cosmic king who finally, decisively, and violently puts an end to evil. But there's a second, even deeper, more personal connection here, isn't there? A connection that speaks directly to that sacrificial imagery we discussed earlier.
Yes. And this is the profound plot twist of the gospel. This is where dense ancient theology becomes deeply emotional and intensely personal for the listener.
Explain that.
Think about all the specific horrors we just spent the last hour discussing in Isaiah 34.
Yeah.
The unquenchable fire, the sword of justice, the cup of God's overflowing indignation against sin.
The profound isolation.
The abandonment to demonic forces.
The rotting, the desolation, the tohu wabohu chaos.
All of it. Now, look at the cross of Jesus Christ. What actually happened to him at Calvary?
He took the punishment.
The sky literally turned black. He was plunged into the absolute darkness of divine judgment. He absorbed the unquenchable fire of God's holy wrath against sin.
He took the sword of justice into his own body.
In the Garden of Gethsemane, he agonized over drinking the cup of God's indignation, and on the cross he drank it down to the very dregs so that there is not a single drop left for those who belong to him.
That is just overwhelming.
Jesus experienced the isolation, the total abandonment, crying out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He experienced the tohu wabohu, the uncreation of Isaiah 34 in his own body and soul.
So he became Edom for us. He became the target of the judgment.
Exactly. The horrors of Isaiah 34 are exactly what Jesus absorbed on the cross. He became the sacrifice in Bozrah so that we wouldn't have to be.
He stood directly in the path of the wrecking ball we talked about at the beginning.
The wrath described in this chapter is the exact wrath that fell on Jesus as our substitute. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ, you've already endured the apocalypse of Isaiah 34, but you endured it in Christ.
He took the massive, fatal blow for you.
He did.
That is staggering. It makes the cross so much more real, so much more weighty. The cross wasn't just a physical Roman execution. It was the absorption of cosmic, universe-dissolving wrath.
Yes.
But, it also brings up a question about God's character that I think a lot of people wrestle with. I know I have.
What is that?
Someone might read Isaiah 34, read about the blood and the pitch, and think, this is just too harsh. How can a loving God write something so terrifying? This doesn't seem like love. It seems like abuse.
That's a very common, very understandable reaction.
How do we reconcile the love of God with the terror of this text?
We have to fundamentally reframe how we understand biblical love. Ask yourself this. Why did God publish this chapter thousands of years in advance?
To give us a heads up.
Why did he send Isaiah and Obadiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Malachi to warn Edom and the nations over and over and over again, century after century?
Because true love warns. If you don't warn someone of danger, you don't love them.
Let me use an analogy that really helped me grasp this concept.
Go for it. Let's say you are driving down a steep, winding mountain road at night in a terrible storm. And there is a massive bridge completely washed out right around a blind, dark corner.
Okay.
If you hit that corner at 60 miles an hour, you are going to go over the cliff and you are going to die. Now, imagine a person standing a mile up the road in the pouring rain, screaming at the top of their lungs, waving road flares, holding up a massive, terrifying red flag that says, "Stop, dead end, destruction ahead."
That person isn't being cruel.
No. They aren't being mean for yelling at you and disrupting your pleasant, comfortable drive. They are being incredibly selflessly kind.
They're desperately trying to save your life.
Exactly. Isaiah 34 is that person with the flares. It is the massive red flag.
That is a perfect way to understand prophecy. The very existence of this terrifying text proves that God is a patient, deeply loving judge.
He wants us to see the washed-out bridge.
He is not willing that any should perish. He doesn't want to strike. If he just wanted to destroy us, he wouldn't have warned us.
That's so true.
He warns us with the most graphic, shocking, visceral language possible because he wants humanity to wake up from its spiritual stupor. He wants to disrupt that invincibility fable we talked about.
He wants us to switch our allegiances.
Yes. From Edom's pride, which is absolutely doomed to burn, to Zion's grace, which will last forever.
So the fire of chapter 34 is just doing the demolition work to make way for the blossoming roses and the everlasting joy of chapter 35.
You got it.
The terror of the wrath makes the beauty of the grace actually mean something.
Yeah.
You can't appreciate the rescue if you don't know the sheer magnitude of the danger you are in.
It truly is a masterclass in holding the tension between the absolute uncompromising holiness and the unfathomable sacrificial love of God.
They aren't contradictory.
Not at all.
Yeah.
At the cross, they are perfectly unified.
Man, what an incredible, heavy, but ultimately hopeful journey this has been today.
It's been profound.
We've gone from a cosmic courtroom where the stars are falling from the sky down to the blood-soaked soil of Edom's capital.
Through the demonic wilderness.
Right, through a haunted wilderness where the measuring line of confusion has been stretched out. And finally, we've ended up at the foot of the cross, where the perfect justice of Isaiah 34 and the boundless mercy of Isaiah 35 meet in the person of Jesus Christ.
It's a journey that demands a response from every person who hears it.
It really does. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Something to think about.
We notice that Isaiah 34 ends with a desolate wasteland that lasts forever and ever. It's a permanent inheritance of ruin.
Yes.
But the very next chapter, the second half of this prophetic diptych, Isaiah 35, ends with the redeemed of the Lord entering Zion with everlasting joy upon their heads. Sorrow and sighing flee away forever.
Two completely different forevers.
Two completely different forevers. Every single human life is currently choosing by their actions and their faith, which forever they will inhabit.
That's the ultimate choice.
So ask yourself, what modern Edomite fortresses are you hiding in today? Is it your intellectual pride, your financial self-sufficiency, your career?
Your reliance on the world's systems.
Do you think you are invincible? Whatever it is, if it's built in opposition to God, you need to abandon that building before the demolition crew arrives. The wrecking ball is coming, the judgment is inevitable, but the door of mercy is wide open right now.
Don't wait. Run to the substitute. Flee from the wrath to come and find your eternal refuge in the Lamb.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep reading the text, keep questioning your assumptions, and as Isaiah commanded, keep seeking out the book of the Lord. We'll catch you next time.